golf fans, welcome. I am your host, RP. It's another episode of Podcast in Regulation. Today is Wednesday, February 19th. You noticed that I did put my picks up from last week for the Genesis Invitational, but didn't feel like there was going to be a whole lot of coverage for that for me on this side because I do like to focus on DP World Tour and LPGA. But if you did, I hope you did track my picks from last week. Hope you decided catching me early might be a good thing and decided not to fade me and played with most of my picks. Overall record last week was 4-3, but even better, it was the odds in my favor. So definitely turned a profit. We'll get to that in a second. But this week we have the Mexico Open for the PGA. We have the Magical Kenya Open for the DP World Tour. And we have the Honda Thailand for the LPGA side. So those are the three that I'm going to be covering. As for some of the other leagues, somebody was asking me to start tracking champions, but I don't know if I have the time to expand and add one more. Honestly, the coverage for PGA is easy. You could find it everywhere. Everyone has a podcast. Everyone has a betting sheet or some sort of media, whether it's Instagram or Twitter, sometimes Discord, where you can follow them and their picks and their coverage. They'll get pretty in-depth and get kind of nerdy. Something I personally like to do as well, but trying to cover 3 leagues and adding a fourth one, technically a fifth one, because if there was a live event that I wanted to cover and throw some money down on, you guys know I've added those to my bet sheets before, as well as collegiate and even Corn Ferry. So I'm just going to lean away from that. There's plenty on my plate as it is. Not much last week, which hence why I didn't post any podcasts or bring any new content. But again, hopefully you were following at least one of the streams or the fan page to catch my picks because I finally hit something decent. As always, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at podinregulation. The email is podcastinregulation@gmail.com. And the Facebook fan page is Podcast in Regulation. So that being said, let's dump into a couple of, weeks to catch up on and kind of recap some of that. So we'll start with the recap of the Founders Cup. The top 10 picks that I had in were Nelly Korda at -120, Jenny Bay, Miyu Yamashita, Ryo Takeda, Jin Young Ko, and Pajari Anarukarn. Just going through these real quick to catch us up and get us current. I did hit the Nelly Korda. It was a $26.58 payout. Missed on Jenny Bay. Hit Miyu Yamashita. That was an $11.63 payout. Missed on Ryo Takeda. And hit on Jin Young Ko for $9.80. Oh, and also missed out on Pajari and Anarukarn. The top 5 pick was a bust. Looked really close, but Celine Boutier's round 274 did not help. And she just got even par. All the other days were great. That was the one that stuck out and obviously hurt us in that pick. So missed out on that. She was T7. She's 12 under, so she was right there. First round leader, Jin Young Ko, missed out on that, but she did have a great start. She is looking really good for the season. End of round 1, she was T4. For a second, she was in second, but I believe 2 players moved ahead of her pretty quickly without her even missing out any strokes or birdieing any holes. They started later, so they had a pretty decent advantage going into, I believe it was 16. They had already overtaken her. So that does it for the Founders Cup. Let's get into the Qatar Masters. So I had Richard Gouveia in the top 40. Missed that. Had Elvis Smiley as a top 30 finish. Missed out on that. Both these guys missed the cut completely. Gouveia was 3 over with the MC, and Elvis Smiley was 8 over with the MC. And then the top 20 made a little bit of ground there. Laurie Cantor was a miss. He finished 35th at only 2 under. We had Julien Guerrier at 50th, shooting even for the tournament. And then Scott Jamieson missed the cut, +4 for him. Now, the one we did hit was Adrian Dumont-Gisser, +320 for a payout of $27.30. The one that was most disappointing, and he has been playing well. This was just kind of sad that it happened. I had another void in terms of the bets. Jodine was a top 10 pick of mine. He would have been a plus 450. He had to withdraw. He was ill. So far, so good, with the exception of I've had a void, I think, one each week of the last 3 weeks. And unfortunately, one of them was, what was it? Jodine, Oberg, and someone else who they just completely plummeted down because of illness or had to withdraw completely. Oh, it might have been Elvis Smiley from 2 weeks ago. So that did it for the Qatar Masters. We'll tally all this up at the end. And then as for the Phoenix Open, limited coverage from me, obviously. But the one and done office pool pick was Tom Kim. He finished T44 at 6 under. The last 2 days were just not good. He posted 67, 66, but then he goes 72 and 73 to finish it out. So dropped quite a bit down the ways. I think he was in 8th or 9th to begin Sunday. And it just, it was ugly. Then we had a top 30 for Corey Connors, which missed. I don't know if he was hurt or if he was sick, kind of going along those same lines, but he was, let me look at this again. He was 11th at one point, day 1 or 2, kind of fighting there. And then his scores progressively just got worse. He started off the event 67. And then he just keeps getting higher and higher, like horrible scores, 71, 73, and 76 finally on Sunday. 76, sometimes I throw that out for any player on a Sunday because at that point, you're now trying to make up ground. You've already made the cut, obviously, but now you're trying to catch up, especially when you have 2 over rounds and you're in the top 15 after day 1. The one that we did hit, Hideki Matsuyama, for $16.25. He was minus 180. He finished T25 at 9 under, so the payout was $25.28. So as we put all of that together, we are looking at a total of $166.75 on the table. Because of the void, the final bets tally ended up being $160.50. To that, we had a $100.59 payout, meaning we lost $59.91. So bankroll for this, bankroll going into the Genesis after these tournaments is $1,061.87. Getting my record that week from 6-24. Add my 5-11 record for this week, ends up being 11-35. So honestly, not bad. It's more just short of a third of hits. So I'll take that this early, especially the way I started out. I think I had 1 or 2 offers or offer and then a 1-win week. So not a bad turnaround. I'll take it. Certainly not looking to make a lot of waves, but the decisions and choices of some of these players have worked out. Let's see how we did for the one and only event last week was Genesis. So as I entered the Genesis last week, I was very much just pivoting and going back and forth. Couldn't quite make up my mind, and I did. And they couldn't have been on opposite ends of the spectrum. If you saw my posts from last week's Genesis, you would have seen that my office pool pick and one and done was Rasmus Højgaard. Completely missed the cut. Was the worst player day 1. And overall, by the time it was all said and done, without even needing 2 more days after missing the cut, he was probably the worst player. Don't know what it was. Tried to find out if he was struggling with anything or if there was weather that played a factor. I watched quite a bit of the Genesis, but I couldn't see anything. And because he was so far down the leaderboard, they weren't even giving him highlights. Although he was coming in fairly highly touted. He is one of those guys you're looking for a breakout this year. He looked good in 2 tournaments so far, and it gave me no indication as to thinking he wouldn't be in contention this week, especially with his previous performance at this course, but that just did not work out. He did not pick up where he left off on any level. And the other selection that I thought about, which I did hit on the winning side for one and done, for just to win outright, Ludwig Åberg. If it wasn't going to be Rasmus for me, Ludwig, after that illness, I thought, you know what, he started off so well. If he could just forget the next few days of how he played a couple weeks ago here, why not him? And he continued to show that, 1, he likes his course, and his game is in fantastic form. So missed out on Rasmus for the office pool one and done. I missed out on the bet for him to be, or to get the 30% boost rate for him to be the first round leader as well as finish it off. So I was looking at wire to wire there. But then, yeah, we hit Ludwig Oberg, $6.50 at plus 2,600. Cashed out 175.50 just for that one bet. Sepp Straka missed the cut. I think a lot of people were expecting bigger things from him. I noticed there was a wave and a little bit of an uptick of him being chosen for my office pool pick. So, unfortunately, just a bad time to waste him. Everything looked like it was somewhat primed to at least perform well, but didn't work out, and he did not look good at all, missing the cut outright. And then top 20 picks, I had taken Taylor Pendrith. He finishes 6 over, so T50, but Colin Morikawa does hit at $18.50 at minus 188, so the payout there was $28.34. And then the last two, both hits, top 30 for Denny McCarthy. He was T5 at 8 under. It was only a $5.75 bet, so it was $11.50 to return. And then Daniel Berger, who value picks everywhere for him, from DFS to office pool picks. You weren't disappointed. It was probably a really good spot to take him, especially if you're trying to already hold on to big names, or you're trying to make up a little bit of ground. If you are in any way, shape, or form kind of where I am, where picking good names, you'd think that they're trending and the course suits them, the track fits them, everything looks like it's an upward trend, and I still end up falling short, if not missing cuts with guys. But Daniel Berger, I put down $21.50 at a minus 115 rate. Finished 12th, 5 under, and that did pay out $40.20. So record for this week was only 4-3, and the on the table amount was $73.50. Final payout was $255.54, meaning I did make a profit this week, guys. So pretty happy about that. It couldn't have lasted long. It was a slow bleed at least. So anytime I did make a little bit of headway with a wager, nothing was really putting me out or crushing me weekly, unless I had missed all my shots. But yeah, total profit $182.04. So the current bankroll after that win is $1,242.91, and my overall record is 15-38. Again, I'll take that. Those small wins, in terms of record, always are encouraging. Never really trying to get that. I don't know if you'll really, as many picks as I make, I don't know if I can ever really push the winning side over to get me anywhere near 500, but I'll take it. Again, some of these are plus bets, so odds are already on the books' favor, but when they do hit, they certainly make a big difference when it comes time to tally everything up for the week and how much I lost or how much I won in this case this week. So first time this year on the good side. Let's see if we can keep it going, taking a preview at the Mexico Open, the LPGA Honda Thailand, and then the Magical Kenya Open. Hopefully this weekend was good to you too. If you didn't take my picks, there were plenty of other underdogs that ended up pretty high on the leaderboard for the Genesis. So hopefully that brought you a little bit of luck and gave you a little bit of a fatter wallet. So because of time constraints, I'm not going to go full on in depth like I usually do. Even when it comes to PGA, obviously I have gone into some numbers, some core strategy, and some of the statistics that could lead to success for some of these players, but this will be kind of condensed, short on time, and I still want to get these things out and give you some content to listen to while you're placing your bets as well, give you some food for thought. But in terms of faves and fades, we are going with Sam Stevens, Jake Knapp, Aaron Rai, and Rasmus Højgaard for the favorites, and I am fading Rakuya Hoshino, Bo Hostler, Akshay Bhatia, who is lost. He looks like he is trying to find his way. Don't know what that is. All golfers go through it, from amateurs to professionals, but his looks like on another level right now. He's either playing fairly well to absolutely atrocious. But that being said, he's still making cuts. He's just not the same as what we saw from him last year. And then the other one is Harry Hall. I'm actually going to pick him throughout different times of the year. I think he's going to be a really good safe bet at times, either putting together a DFS lineup or getting some good value if you can catch him in a top 40 or top 30, and occasionally maybe even cracking a top 20, depending on how weak the field is, like this one. But for whatever reason, I don't know if his driving is going to be good enough to get him down there, just like some of the other ones. Approach is more important here. Looked at this course, seen it before. Accuracy, tee to green is one thing. Distance is big, mainly because you can afford to spray it. You can move the ball around and still recover, whether or not you're in the rough or on just that first cut. They're not having to deal with something from last week where I think it was 4 to 4.5 inches thick cut rough versus 2 to 2.5 here. So you've cut it in half, but distance is going to be a premium and accuracy won't necessarily. But then after that, you're looking at approach. These greens are going to be pretty receptive, so as long as you're missing a good mark, you probably can leave yourself something more than manageable to give yourself a look at birdie, or if you got to scramble and get up and down, give yourself good looks for par. That being said, aside from the faves and fades, a couple sleepers that I'm going to be looking at here. I don't know if I'm going to be, well, for sure I am betting on 2 of them, but the other 2, just one of those things where probably throwing them in some sort of watch list, but it's going to be Kevin Yu, Jackson Suber, Rika Hoey, and Quade Cummins. Quade Cummins is a name that's familiar with me, and if you'd listened to the show and you can know a little bit about my coverage and my gambling on the Korn Ferry Tour, he had some really good, bright, shining spots on the Korn Ferry. And I expect that to show up every once in a while here, and in a lesser field, in a course that is receptive to going low. I am not expecting big things from him, but I do expect him to be place surprisingly well and somewhat high, especially considering that maybe not a lot of people know about him and his successes on Korn Ferry from last year. So those are the 4 sleepers. If we're going to get a little bit in depth of what else we're looking at for this course, we're looking at, like I said, about 2 to 2.5 inches of rough this week, playing about 7,400 yards, and it is a par 71. So room to maneuver, a lot to work with, but overall, I think the weakened field, the lesser field, is going to show us, if anything, more of those mid-range golfers kind of coming and rising to the top for at least 1 week. So as I'm looking at this, I'm just going to finalize my bet now. My one and done is going to be Aaron Rai. I don't think I'm going to take him to win on any bets, but I am favoring him for whatever reason, looking at his strokes gained. Struggled a little bit so far this year, but again, anytime I look at these, all you need is a little bit of a spark and a little bit of a hot putter, and his strokes gained is decent. It's nothing great. There are guys who I'd mentioned on the faves list who are better than him. Actually, even in the fades list, there are guys better than him statistically. But if we're going to go with gut and feeling like I missed out on Ludwig Oberg last week and picked the absolutely wrong choice of a golfer to go into my pool, I'm going with Aaron Rai. That's just a feeling. I like some of the model. I like some of how his game is still around. It's not lost. He's not as bad as what Akshay is looking for right now, but call it a hunch. We're just going to go with that one. And then as we go down, we're going with a top 20 bet for Quade Cummins. He's a plus 187. Then we have 2 choices here at the top 30. Rika Hoey at plus 170. Kevin Yu at plus 105. And we'll round it out with a top 20 pick of Michael Kim at plus 160. Jake Knapp plus 175. And then top 10, we're going with Sam Stevens at plus 300. Definitely like his game suited for this specific tournament, and I am loving the trend of he's found some consistency, and just looking at results and strokes gained, nothing really big stands out other than he's just really consistent, and especially this time frame and right now. So if you're going to go with anyone there and taking a little bit of a dark horse, there's your plus 300. Now, going from the fairly wide open Mexico Open to the magical Kenya Open, I am recalling quite a bit as I watch highlights and as I remember some of what I watched last year. beautiful scenery, great track, and it is tree lined along with some obstacles that, if you can manage them, you're looking at going really low and putting up half decent numbers. If you can manage the entire way, most likely you'll be just fine, except there are holes on here that all of a sudden go from getting up and down for par to double and maybe even triple bogey. The one premium that you're looking at is accuracy off the tee. So scaling back a little bit on the distance, looking at some of these approaches being kind of long, but at least you're in prime position, getting in position A and having a clear-cut view of the flag from all the prime choices that you could end up on in any of these fairways. It's a Parkland course, so you're going to be looking at a lot of these maturing trees, these tucked corners where you take it too long. I'm not going to say you go out of bounds, but you definitely outdrive the fairway on certain ones. And then you look at these, what I remember when I saw these highlights were small undulations on these greens. I'd say they're average size. They don't look that punishing if you miss, but believe it or not, I remember seeing a lot of players end up on specific sides and all having the same misread. So there are going to be some nuances for each of these greens, a little bit of trickiness. Nothing crazy, nothing too fast, but I think you are going to get a lot of those really short lip outs or some of those putts that they'll stroke that thing with confidence, but it won't have any chance if you're not taking the right line. So that's definitely something I remember. But yeah, even more so with how amazing the course looks and how well it's been maintained. The trees are and can be a problem based on driving accuracy. And part of that might be the advantage or disadvantage based on each golfer's preference if it is the Kikuyu grass. Some of it can be grabby, some of them can just demand attention when it comes to putting details and trying to, at the very least, miss on the right side. But honestly, it's a great looking course. I can't stress that enough. I was looking at highlights again, and that's just a really awesome visual to see this tournament. Let's get into faves and fades. Eugenio Chacarra, live golfer, but has played well in the two tournaments that he's participated in on the DP World Tour side. A favorite in his own right, and everyone seems to be leaning on him as well, Sebastian Soderberg. Now this one, not so much a revelation this week, but you just noticed his name at the top of the list at the beginning of the season. It's Brian Robinson Thompson. I don't have much of a background on him, but as much research and digging as I do weekly, you just can't help but to notice his strokes gained and where he falls in every single week. So he definitely is there. He'll continue to be there until he proves me wrong. Going back to the well with Joe Dean, and then an old favorite with Joost Luiten, and then because I'm not convinced that he's more so of a better player than that blip of the radar from two weeks ago, I'm going to put Ricardo Gouveia in there as well. And then for the fades, I am not going to touch Hao Tong Lee. I think he could play well here, but I am going to guess with a slight letdown. So if you could take him in like a top 40 pick and not feel bad about throwing down quite a bit of money to not make that same amount back, hey, by all means, go do it. But for where I am, and again, value what he's coming off a win, I don't know if he'll be able to quite string these together. So he will also end up in my fades list. A guy that I used a lot last year and who actually played well here last year, Robin Williams. He is popping up on people's radars thinking that just because of course familiarity, track, and history, he'll play well here again. And I can believe that. You can 100% argue for that and maybe even win me over. But with all of, I would say, some other podcasts and a few other bookmakers looking at him as not an odds-on favorite to win, but certainly within reason to end up in the top 40, I just didn't think it was worth my time or money to put him up there. And then Jaden Shaper. I'm also kind of pulling back on him a little bit. He's on my radar. He's on the watch list. I've mentioned him before. I don't think I've gambled on him this year, and I think I'll wait one more. There's something about a little bit of the up and down and instability and inconsistency that hasn't quite won me over yet to make me want to put money on him. But again, similar to Robin Williams, in this instance, you probably can get me to back off from taking a hard line and maybe not betting on him, but taking him off a fades list. I could be persuaded either way, but gut feeling, I'll wait one more week, maybe even two, just to make sure that Shaper is heading in the right direction before I really make any big, bold moves with him. Now, as for the bets, we're going to do one bet in the top 40. Little bit of a dark horse, but at the same time, the odds don't really say so. I'm taking Ashen Wu at plus 160. Top 30 bet, Youst Loudon plus 120. I love that bet, and he constantly comes through for me. So excited to see how he continues to play this out. Watch, this will be the one time that I take him again this year, and he absolutely misses the cut, but we'll see. Top 20 picks, Joe Dean, going back to that well, he's plus 150. So even odds makers with the illness coming off of last week or 2 weeks ago, they're feeling like he can come back right to form of where he left off from the beginning of the year in those first three tournaments. And then top 10, we are going with Eugenio Chacarra. He's a plus 475. And Brian Robinson Thompson plus 450. I absolutely am in love with those two ending up in the top 10. I don't think this field coming in is very strong. Quite a few names that you'll usually see playing in the DP World Tour are not participating in this. So I have zero reason to believe that these two can't shoot up the leaderboard and go low, even if it is just for a day. That might be all they need in order to keep themselves in the top 10 and maybe even, hoist up that trophy. So that'll wrap up the Magical Kenya Open. What is next? Oh, I guess we've gone through the first two. So last but not least, it's going to be the Honda Thailand for the LPGA. So in terms of the not so hot start to the LPGA Tour side, it's been fairly good to me, but I think I'm going to take a different approach this week. I'll go through the faves and fades, but I think instead of taking winners and top finishes, which they're only going out to top 20s, I may actually just focus on prop bets this week for the ladies. I will be probably just picking all of the 3-ball, the components that are being allotted to me other than finishing positions, just see how that works. I've already put in quite a few bets between the Genesis and the Mexico Open and the Magical Kenya. So I think we'll just get with about 3 bets here, but the 3 bets are all 3-ball. Let's see where to start. Biggest one for this tournament, the LPGA Honda Thailand, is a smaller field. So you're looking at 72 and you're also looking at no cut. So it's funny, anytime I've witnessed that, you can get pretty aggressive, but the scores can get away from you really quickly, or you can turn it around, and if you got off to a slow start day 1, or even the front 9, you're looking at staying aggressive and potentially just tearing up the back of the course and getting yourself right back into contention for a first round leader type of position. So you're going to see a fluctuation of scores. I think the consistent ones are obviously going to make their way up to the top in a marathon type of race versus a sprint for some of these players who can drive the ball well, who can get hot, who sometimes all they need their putter to do is make the makeable ones. So those are the type of elements that can probably encourage quite a bit of the low scoring for this tournament. And if you're looking at average, it's right around 20 under when it comes to winner scoring average. So what are we looking for here? Putting. Putting is going to be huge here. They're saying that they're fairly receptive, but with some of the humidity in that area, maybe they stick a little bit. Maybe they back up a little too much on some of your approaches. So putting is going to be number 1 here for strokes gained that I've looked up and kind of compared. It kind of flips between putting and approach. Approaches for birdies here are big, mainly because you get to test pretty quickly how receptive they are and how they will react as you are throwing them and coming home. But we'll see. As far as weather is concerned, I don't see anything other than just the humidity playing a part. I don't see any torrential downpours. I don't see any misting or any of that. So weather, if anything, looks pretty prime and like they're ready to go in pretty good conditions. So for that, we're looking at faves like Patty Tavatanakit, Jin Young Ko. Love that pick all the time, every time now. She's looking like she is ready to probably win 2 or 3 times at least this season, the way she's played so far. Heiran Ryu, someone we had a lot of last year, and I am favoriting one of the sisters. We are going with Moria Chitanagarn as a favorite. I am fading Arya though. I'm also fading Brooke Henderson and Gino Tidical. Even though she's had really good tournaments here, again, we're going to gut feeling. If I am looking at the odds or what it costs to take her in specific spots, that kind of played a part. I don't know if it's worth it versus some of the other ones where when I originally thought about going with winners and finishing positions, she may have made it, but on the lesser scale and on probably a lesser wager. So that being said, the 5 group bettings that I'm going with. So 3-ball between Ayaka Furue, Lauren Coughlin, and Jasmine Sawanampura. I am taking Ayaka Furue at plus 130. Arya Jurkanagarn versus Lynn Grant versus Ya Lamino, plus 175 for no. And then Heiran Ryu, I'm taking at plus 105 versus Brooke Henderson versus Shineti Wanasan. And then Lilia Vu versus Jin Young Ko versus Yuka Sazo. I am taking Jin Young Ko at plus 105. And last but not least, I know I faded her, but in first round, I think Gino Tidical can get out ahead. She's a plus 110 versus Running Yin versus Patty Tavatanakit. So that is probably out of the 5 I have the least amount of confidence in. But it's that fine line of me saying I'm going to fade Gino, but I will take her in the first round just against these 3. I think she may have a hiccup, and overall, I think Patty may win this matchup. So if this were over a 72-hole match, probably take Patty Tavatanakit. But in this case, we're going to keep it simple, and even though I'm fading her as a whole for the tournament, I'll take her on day 1 with Gino. That will do it for what I have and anything that I'm betting on this week. It kind of ran longer than I was hoping, but I did have to catch up for these past 2 weeks. Hopefully you did the same and you were able to make some money. And yeah, how about we go on the clock? So this week's On the Clock is going to be a little bit of a revisitation of something I had mentioned a couple weeks ago, TGL. I was encouraged to bet on it to see if it drew me any closer into wanting to watch more of it and really get into it. I ended up watching a little bit of it and it's fine, but I haven't changed my stance. The only reason I did it was because somebody told me to give it one more try, and I'm very much for that. Kind of treating it the same way I treat some restaurants or some food where didn't have the greatest experience. You think you might like it, and maybe you've tried it a second time already, and you're willing to give it that third time's a charm to see if it really is going to stick with what you've kind of come up with. And I think it has. I went 1-1 on my TGL picks. I was not going to put that on here. It's just something to do, something to bet on middle of the week, aside from the other things that I've thrown money on. But because I am not a big fan of it to begin with, I thought maybe it'd make it more interesting with me putting money down, and it didn't. So conclusion is I'm actually out on TGL. If it's on in the background, great, and sometimes I will put it on, but it just doesn't draw me. There isn't much about it that I find compelling. The music's kind of annoying in a stadium setting of a simulator. Somebody I got into a little bit of a conversation with, they said that there was a comment that had mentioned that it's no different than Live being loud and shorter and odd, but it's still golf to me because you're outside and you're actually playing. So I get it. This is a team event and some guys are into it. Hey, more power to you. Good on you. I'll have it on in the background, but I'm not invested in this. That being said, I did mention also last week that I am working with a partnership. There may be 2 now in the works. We'll see. Stay tuned for that. But that'll do it for this episode of Podcast and Regulation. Hopefully you guys have a fantastic weekend. Make some money. have fun doing it, and please take everything that I do with a grain of salt. Maybe you're just fading me. Maybe that's working for you. So good luck with that too. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Pod and Regulation. Facebook fan page is Podcast and Regulation. Email is podcastandregulation@gmail.com. Again, my name is RP, and this was Podcast and Regulation. Guys, good luck. I'll see you next week.